Many ancient religio-cultural worldviews have interacted and influenced one another at different phases of their diachronic development, as works of Wendy Doninger, Sidney Griffiths, and Ninian Smart witness. These ancient traditions attracted the West in its own search for the archetype of Homo religiosus in the work of Eliade. Incidentally, Christian missionaries of the 19th century were active collaborators and linguist assistants to the armchair Orientalists such as Max Muller, the one who compiled the sacred books of the East, and contributed to the beginning of exchange, critical inquiry, and learning of cultures and sacred texts from Asia. For instance, James Leger, the Oxford sinologist, he was a very active collaborator with Max Muller. And some centuries before Leger, the learned courtesans of Akbar, the Islamic emperor in India, were also responsible for bequeathing the Upanishad, the philosophical treatise of the Hindu religion, the Vedic extract, to the benefit of all in modern times. The English version via the Latin, via the Persian from Sanskrit, the original language of the Upanishads. The robust and prolific discourse of the Jesuits' missions of the 16th and 17th centuries in Asia, from China, India, Japan, Philippines, Myanmar, Laos, Cambodia, and many other regions in the continent provided another testament to a plurality of vibrant and established civilizations in Asia. If Asia is the cradle of most of the world religions, wherein encounters and interactions between different ways of life took place, it has also witnessed contestation and conflicts arising out of these different civilizations. The conflict between the three Abrahamic faiths, accentuated by certain political interests at different phases, the simmering tension between right-wing Hinduism and Islam in South Asia, are conflicts sourced and fed by interpretation of sacred texts of these ancient traditions. While the conflicts cannot be ignored, and without trivializing the suffering and destructions these conflicts inflict upon communities in Asia, it is important to recognize a marked feature shared in common by communities in Asia. Asia also exhibits a marked characteristic, which is endurance of difference. Asia has a feature, and that is its ability for tolerance and even fecund accommodation of another way of life or religion. Suffice it here some examples of Buddhism that is traced to India-Nepal border as its beginning, but flourishes today more beyond its homeland. The Sufi, which is Islamic, and the Bhakti, which is Hindu. There's a very thin line of differentiation in their mystical, devotional spirituality, and the many instances of Christianity being translated and indigenized into the many indigenous peoples' culture in Asia. So therefore, the phenomena of growing Christianity, albeit indigenized in many cultures of Asia, is also another aspect that needs to be recognized within the historical, socio-economic, and religio-cultural backdrop that mediates Asia today. Doing Asian Women Theology, interrogating from the margins. Now, to do Asian Women Theology, we have also a diversity of contexts. Asian women occupy very many multiple identities: modern, postmodern, liberated, creative, powerful, together with being excluded, exploited, and vulnerable. While it is agreed that there is no homogeneous identity that encapsulates the experiences of women in Asia, there is, however, a larger population who can be categorized as the margins. The term margins is used advisedly here to draw attention to the millions of women in Asia that remain excluded and exploited by rigid structure of patriarchy enforced by manifold interrelated dimensions of society. The new mission document of the WCC defines the margins as those who are excluded from the center, wherein power, influence, and possibilities reside. The margins are thus those who reside in the periphery, characterized by struggle, vulnerability, negation, and powerlessness. The margins are those people whose dignity and human rights are negated, and the margins are those who are excluded from decision-making table because of their gender, caste, or sexuality. Life for the margins are characterized by struggle, hunger, suppressed voice, neglected gifts, exploited bodies, humiliation, human rights denied, and without freedom to own agency of the self. Given these predominant circumstances for many in Asia today, theology arising from the conditions and context of women in Asia needs to posit critical questions. There are too many unfulfilled dreams, too many limitations, too much exclusions, too many incidences of violence. What has gone wrong? Who is responsible? What are the alternatives? The persistent condition of vulnerability and exclusion requires answers, directions, and vision. Doing women theology in Asia today, therefore, calls for an interrogative posture, a position that raises critical questions and makes it imperative to translate eloquent pronunciation into lived realities. It is noteworthy that the organizers have employed the term doing with theology. There is an urgency for action, a theology that is not limited to mere reflection and rhetoric, but active participation and active translation of these realities to practical implementations in the communities. So among the plurality of contexts that require interrogation from the margins, I shall identify 4 areas: ecclesial exclusion, economic development, peace building, and interreligious encounters. Now, we need to be sure that these 4 areas are in no way exhaustive of the areas of concern faced by women in Asia. Ecclesial exclusion. The volume of Asian Handbook of Theological Education and Ecumenism, edited by Anton Hope and Wati Longjar, Dr. Boho, Dietrich Wenner. This volume has 3 essays by 3 Asian women church leaders and theologian, Angela Wong, Wai Ching, Moon Suk Lee, and Aruna Nyanadasan. And these essays provide excellent resources for historical developments and the salient features of Asian women movements. And these essays highlight the concerns, as Professor Kang has written, these highlights bringing women out from invisibility to visibility in ecumenical organizations. Since the last quarter of the 20th century, the conversation and theological articulation of women equal participation in the church has continued. The World Council of Churches has provided support towards women equal participation with initiatives such as the Decade of Churches in Solidarity with Women from 1988 to 1999. So therefore, there has been changes and progress, but here the qualm is that it has been limited, and still women continue to be those filling the pews and active in the peripheral activities, resource generators, but dismally underrepresented in the decision-making processes and church leadership, which is still dominated by the male members. This is not new observation. In the recent years, there have been many writings lamenting on the persistent exclusion of women, and writings of Fulata Moyo, Monica Melangton, Nam Song Kang, and Kat's CCA of last year in Seoul here, all those bring out this lamentation. Given this persistent, resistant exclusion and marginalization of women, a fundamental question from an interrogative posture arises. Should there be radical mechanism to ensure practical realization of the articulations and recommendations? Excellent analysis highlighting these intricate metrics of patriarchal dominance exists. And it is important that these are translated into policies and practices that truly manifest equal participation and equal acceptance of women in the church. Second, economic development. The wind of globalization has certainly impacted Asia. And globalization certainly has both its ills and merit. There is the opportunity for employment and empowerment through education, but at the same time it has also generated more inequalities. Globalization that is focused on market expansion and profit-oriented is generally hegemonic and exploitative, and it is oblivious to the well-being and survival of the masses and the protection of the environment. Particularly the modern phenomena of globalization understood in terms of profit-making tends to feed itself upon the most vulnerable individuals and systems. Herein lies the vicious intersection between patriarchy and economic growth, resulting in the victimization of women and other vulnerable members of the society. A major consequence of globalization on women in Asia is the multi-billion